August 1969. The Woodstock Festival unites 400,000 young people. Demonstrations against the war in Vietnam enrage the White House. It is a time of protest, of hippies, drugs, and anarchism. In the Hollywood Hills, early on Saturday, the 9th of August, the Daily Maid walked into a house in Cielo Drive, once the home of Cary Grant and then Doris Day's son, Terry Melcher. She fled to a neighbor, screaming, "Murder, death, bodies, blood." Slumped dead at the wheel of a white Rambler, the police found an 18-year-old youth, shot 4 times in the head and chest, with his neck slashed. His name was Stephen Parent. On the front lawn was the body of Abigail Folger, heiress to the Folger coffee millions, pierced by multiple bayonet wounds. She had bled so much that her white nightgown first appeared to be a red one. Near the front door was her boyfriend, Wojtek Frykowski, writer, producer, drug dealer, shot in the back and stabbed 51 times after a pistol whipping that dented his head 13 times. In the living room hung Sharon Tate, star of Valley of the Dolls, 8 months pregnant. She had been strangled and stabbed 16 times with a bayonet. Her husband, film director Roman Polanski, was away in Europe. Next to her was the body of her ex-fiancé, Jay Sebring, hairstylist, shot through the lung with a towel over his head like a grotesque hood. He was joined to her with a rope looped over a beam. On the front door, in Sharon Tate's blood, was written the word pig. The police were appalled and baffled. In a knee-jerk reaction, they arrested the only surviving member of the household, a 19-year-old youth named William Garretson, employed as caretaker and living in a small house in the grounds. 2 days later, they let him go.
Is he loose? The situation is this. He has been released. We prepared a writ of habeas corpus to be filed today if he was not released. We told the authorities our position, and we're ready to go to court. The police have considered our position, have investigated the case, have treated him well, and have come, I think, to the same conclusion that I've had since we started with this, that the boy is innocent, he's not involved in any way, and he has been released.
The day after the Cielo Drive murders, 15 miles away, there was what police assumed was a copycat murder. At his Spanish-style house near Griffith Park, supermarket tycoon Lino LaBianca had been repeatedly stabbed. His wife, Rosemary, was strangled with an electric cord. Cut into LaBianca's chest was the word war and a series of crosses. A carving fork was stuck in his stomach. Over his head was draped a white hood. In blood, on the living room walls was written, "Death to pigs." On the refrigerator were the words, "Helter Skelter." Nothing was stolen. A police spokesman attempted to reassure the public, but failed to link the 2 crimes.
Yes, we have 17 sergeants and 2 lieutenants whose prime responsibility now is the investigation of the both homicides. There are some things there that were of similar nature, but actually the homicides are not connected. I think the public and a lot of the media picked out the fact that they were similar in nature, possibly because of the blood and the inscriptions. But this is rather a common type of thing in homicides. We've had many cases before where the suspect is written in blood or in lipstick or various things of that nature.
It took 3 months to connect the 2 crimes, and a third one, the killing of a music teacher named Gary Hinman. A hippie named Bobby Beausoleil had left his fingerprints at the scene of that crime. When he was arrested, he was wearing a shirt stained with Hinman's blood. A girl named Susan Atkins was identified as being there with him. She was among the hippies arrested in a raid on a commune at a run-down ranch near Death Valley. The band of hippies who lived there had been financing themselves by stealing Volkswagens and turning them into dune buggies. They were surprised in a pre-dawn raid by the highway patrol.
We were constantly taking dope and stealing cars, and they just sit around all day and sleep, and that's about it. And we went around collecting garbage and had that for dinner and went to the store once in a while, and that was about it. They just slept and got loaded.
Hiding in a cabinet under the sink in the bathroom, the patrolmen found the leader of the group. He was a small, 5'2", would-be folk singer. His name was Charles Manson. 26 of the Manson family, as they called themselves, were arrested in the raid. Their arrest was unconnected to the Tate or LaBianca murders. Manson appeared in court for a preliminary hearing on charges of auto theft. Some of the girls from the camp were there as spectators. Most were released, but not Susan Atkins. She boasted to a cellmate that she had been in on both the Sharon Tate and LaBianca murders, as well as the Hinman killing. The cellmate told the police, and on December 1, the Los Angeles police called a press conference.
Today, warrants have been issued for the arrest of 3 individuals in connection with the murders of Sharon Tate, Abigail Folger, Rakowski, Stephen Parent, and Thomas John Sebring. These murders occurred on August the 9th on Cielo Drive in West Los Angeles. These persons also were involved in the murder deaths of Rosemary LaBianca and Lino LaBianca, president of Gateway Markets in Hollywood. This homicide took place a day later on August 10th, 1969. It is anticipated that an additional 4 or 5 persons will be named in indictments which will be sought from the Los Angeles County Grand Jury. The persons for whom warrants have been issued are Charles D. Watson, 24 years of age, now in custody in McKinney, Texas, Patricia Krenwinkle, and Linda Louise Kasabian, not yet in custody. The development of information from the 2 separate investigations of the Tate and LaBianca cases led detectives to the conclusion that the crimes in both cases were committed by the same group of people.
Linda Kasabian turned state's evidence, and as a result, 3 more of the tribe were arrested. They were 20-year-old Leslie Lulu Van Houten, 17-year-old Steve Grogan, and its leader, Charles Manson. Charles Manson, father unknown, had been born 35 years before, the unwanted son of a prostitute. With his mother often in jail, Charles had lived in a series of orphanages, then reformatories, and finally in jails, where he was sent for burglary, stealing cars, forging, and pimping. By the time he was due to be released from California State Penitentiary, he had spent more than half his life behind bars. He pleaded to be allowed to stay. "This is my only home," he told prison authorities. "I don't know if I can cope out there." He made his way to San Francisco in early 1967 to discover that he could cope very well. The city had become the capital of a new culture. Turning on and dropping out were the new catchphrases. Grass and hallucinatory drugs were everywhere. Manson found that he could con his way into bed and board with any number of rich middle-class girls with flowers in their hair. He got them hooked on LSD and group sex.
Everybody has to come to truth. The whole country, the whole world is going to have to come to truth. And that is not money. Truth is not in your money.
A dozen of them happily went with him in a converted bus to Los Angeles. The killing began when they were living on the old Spahn Ranch in Simi Valley, the former home of Western star William S. Hart. In return for various favors from family members, including Lynette Squeaky Fromm, George Spahn, the 81-year-old owner, let the group live there free. They lived an idyllic life, sharing everything. But there was a sinister side too. The psychotic Manson invented games where they took turns to play the parts of victims who were tortured and terrorized. He dominated his followers totally.
Well, when I first met him, the man talked to me and he says, why don't you come up and the rules are that, you know, there is no rules. You just look at it and just be beautiful with it, and it's just beautiful to you.
Yeah.
You know, and I love him.
Mm-hmm. His so-called power, which is, it only lies in his happiness.
Yeah.
That's what attracts people, is he's completely happy.
Warm. He dances.
Gentle, he dances, he sings, he looks beautiful, he looks happy. And this draws a lot of people, just like people are drawn to little babies.
The police raided the ranch looking for stolen cars. A large cache of arms was discovered. Family members, including Charles, were arrested, but they had to be released because the warrant was wrongly dated. Among those released was Donald Shea. He made the mistake of crossing Charles and suddenly disappeared. Later, family members testified that Manson had shot him, cut up his body, and buried the pieces around the ranch. They were arrested again when Susan Atkins boasted of the murders. Because of her proud confession, the police were finally able to connect the Tate, Hinman, and LaBianca murders. Going to trial, the prosecution asked the judge to consider the cases together.
We expect to try all 6 of these defendants on both cases at the same time. That, of course, would be subject to any ruling on the part of the judge should any of the defendants move to sever cases or defendants. We are prepared and intend, however, to go to trial as soon as possible and to try all 6 parties and 2 cases at the same time.
The trial of Charles Manson and followers lasted over 9.5 months, breaking the records for the longest and most expensive murder trial ever held in the USA.
Hey, Charlie, look up here, honey, Charlie. Right up here, got a boy, that's good.
Most of the Manson family stayed solidly behind their leader. Tripping into court with him every day like 3 innocents were 21-year-old Susan Atkins, Leslie Van Houten, aged 20, and Patricia Krenwinkle, 21. The defense had its problems.
Charlie Manson is an amazing man in many ways, and I'm not convinced that a court-appointed attorney will be so persuasive that he will accept whatever choice Judge Keene dictates in the case. I'm not greedy for the case. I would like to handle it. I think it's an interesting case. And as I said, 2 different teams of attorneys discussed with Manson, and Manson asked if I would represent him, and I came to see him on that basis, and solely on that basis.
Sometimes the 3 girls sang like schoolgirls on their way into court to show their solidarity with Manson. Susan Atkins now tried to withdraw her testimony against Manson. Meanwhile, the lawyers pursued their delaying tactics.
The purpose is to conform to our law. Now, there are rules of evidence which are in existence, and lawyers are obliged to follow all rules of court, including the rules of evidence. And the vice is in the question. If a lawyer asks an improper question and it solicits matter that will come out that should not be before the court and before the jury, then the lawyer has the obligation to object. The one that is wrong is the person that's asking the improper question.
Prosecution attorney Vincent Bugliosi was confident.
Well, the defense can claim anything they want, and I'm sure they're going to make all types of claims throughout the trial. Whether anyone wants to believe them or not is something else.
He was asked to comment on suggestions that Atkins' testimony could be doubted because she might have been on LSD, and was dismissive of the chances of this defense tactic.
React to this in the courtroom.
Well, it's common and customary whenever you put on a witness, especially a star witness, that the defense is going to attack her credibility using every device and technique available to them. I don't anticipate any problem in this particular area of LSD. Speaking in the abstract, because someone takes LSD does not mean that thereafter they are forevermore precluded from telling the truth about anything. This, of course, is preposterous.
But despite the obstructive tactics and the determination of the family to treat the trial as a lark, a horrible and macabre story of random and unprovoked murder unfolded. Manson frequently changed his mood and appearance, and his acolytes, still totally under his spell, faithfully copied each change. They did all they could to make the proceedings appear farcical, shaving their heads and cutting crosses and swastikas into their foreheads. But nothing they could do could hide their depravity. It emerged that Manson believed that he could ferment racial hatred by murdering rich people at random and putting the blame on black activists. So he trained his disciples in breaking and entering, and sent them out with instructions to kill using the most revolting methods possible. While Manson had selected the Tate household in an obscure act of vengeance on the previous owner, Terry Melcher, the LaBiancas were chosen by pure chance. Charles's murderous emissaries just drove about until they found a rich person's house they could easily get into. Judge and lawyers were constantly threatened. So was Linda Kasabian, who had gained immunity by appearing as the main prosecution witness. She testified for 18 days, spilling all the beans. Yet so strong was Manson's influence over his disciples that she claimed she still loved him. Recalling the murders, Susan Atkins had testified, "You have to have a real love in your heart to do this for people," meaning Manson. She said that stabbing Sharon Tate sent a rush through her. With horrifying naivety, she said, "The more you do it, the better you like it." Hypnosis was suggested as a defense.
Well, I'm going to show that she wasn't in her right state of mind, that she was, in fact, following this man, and as I indicated, whatever he said was right is what she would do, whatever he said was wrong, and I think that by this time, now that you've seen other reports from where Mr. Charlie Manson is, there's some indication that he is, in fact, a man that has this kind of Svengali power over people.
At a parole board some years later, one of the few male members of the commune, Tex Watson, damningly told how Charles said for me to take the gun and the knife and go up to where Terry Melcher used to live. He said to kill everyone in the house, as gruesome as I could. However, he denied hanging Sharon Tate up after she was dead.
I cannot confess to, because it would be a lie. I don't remember her being hung. And I have often thought about this, and I don't know how that happened, but I have really no comment on that. I just don't remember that fact, that particular fact there. As far as me taking the lead role, I was the male at the crime. But at that time I did not consider myself a leader. I considered myself more of a follower of Charles Manson in carrying out his orders.
How Manson could have achieved this domination was a major question, as was his sanity.
Always goes good. Everything is good. This morning, he just made a fool of himself. Again. Well, then he questions my sanity. I question his, huh? Are you sane? Sane? Yes. That's relative.
The issue of Manson's sanity dominated the trial. Among the prosecution witnesses were the maid who discovered the Tate killings, and the caretaker, William Garrettson, was closely questioned by the press.
But you paid no particular attention to it.
How can you account for the fact that there was so much shooting and screaming and you didn't hear it?
I don't know. Was your hi-fi on at that time? Your stereo?
The jury took 10 days to reach their verdicts. Then they found Manson, Atkins, Krenwinkle, and Van Houten guilty, and they were sentenced to death. In a later trial, Manson, Bruce Davis, Bobby Beausoleil, and Clem Grogan were found guilty of other murders. Tex Watson was tried separately and found guilty. Despite all the revelations, Manson's followers remained loyal.
Sisters, and Charles Manson is your brother. And a lot of your sisters are in jail. There's a lot of innocent people being crucified.
Squeaky Fromm, acting head of the family in Manson's absence, was his ambassador to the world outside.
I may not take law books into my cell, The jail law library is totally inadequate for legal research. I may not have a phone in my name. I may not receive calls. My legal work is constantly looked over by the sheriff for contraband.
Years later, she tried to assassinate President Ford and was sentenced to life imprisonment. The sentenced members of the family were saved from execution when California abandoned the death penalty. As he fought unsuccessfully for parole from a life sentence, Tex Watson seemed to have repented.
I have to live with it daily, just as the families do. There's much bitterness on my part. There is underlying hostility and righteous indignation against what I've done.
And despite her smart appearance, Susan Atkins' appeal for parole was rejected on the grounds that she was not fit to be out in society.
After finding of unsuitability, we relied upon the following circumstances in determining that you are not suitable for parole at this time and would pose an unreasonable risk and danger to society if released from prison.
Charles Manson has made sporadic, defiant appearances over the years at appeals and parole reviews.
Going back down in an old hole. How do you feel about the decision? How do you feel about the decision? What decision? Not the jail. Everyone's in jail.
He has also given interviews to the press, sometimes seeming lucid, other times crazed, as here when talking about Gary Hinman.
20 years. I've done everything he told me to do. And I got to thinking, now, why don't this guy do something I tell him to do? And he said, no. I said, well, how comes I'm always doing what you tell me to do, but then you never do what I say do? And he said, well, blah, blah, blah. So I said, now you do what I say. And he said, no. I said, you do exactly what I say.
On another occasion, after his application for parole had been refused, Manson was asked where he would go if he were released.
I might go to Libya. I might go see the Ayatollah. I might go to France and catch somebody in France that I'm kind of upset with.
He is still in prison and is unlikely ever to emerge. That is one small crumb of comfort for society, as he expresses absolutely no remorse for his appalling crimes.
Remorse for what? You people have done everything in the world to me. Doesn't that give me equal right? I can do anything I want to you people at any time I want to, because that's what you've done to me. If you spit in my face and smack me in the mouth and throw me in solitary confinement for nothing, what do you think's gonna happen when I get out of here? Maybe I haven't done enough. I might be ashamed of that, for not doing enough, for not giving enough, for not being more perceptive, for not being aware enough, for not understanding, for being stupid. Maybe I should have killed 400 or 500 people, then I would have felt better. Then when I felt like I really offered society something. You've got it stuck in your brain that I murdered somebody. What do you want to call me a murderer for? I've never killed anyone. I don't need to kill anyone. I think it. I have it here. The street is my world. I don't pretend to go uptown and be anything fancy. I can, but I find more real in the world that I'm in than I do the tinsel. And the real world is the one I have to deal with every day, you know. Believe me, if I started murdering people, there'd be none of you left.